Hello and welcome to Two Girls in a Pod. I'm Sharon.
I'm Christy.
Welcome to you once again from our little humble abode over here. We have been working really hard, or hardly working, I don't know, it depends on the day and who you're talking to, I guess. But to get our studio up and running a little bit more effectively. Because, doing our podcast is really something that we really enjoy, and it's something that we really invest a lot of time and money into.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been working on that the last, 500 weeks?
Well, since the beginning, it's been a work in progress. But here in the last couple of weeks, we've gotten a few things done that felt like really needed to be done probably a long time ago. But
well, like told Chrissy, one of the cool things is that the way we set this up, one side of my office is my therapy office. The other side of my office is our recording studio.
Podcast
studio. Which is kind of cool because what it also does is it really helps with the sound and stuff, so that there's more privacy even for my clients. But, as we've been doing this, one of the things we have realized is there's a lot of stuff that goes into a new venture. And with that comes some anxiety.
True. Excitement.
Mm-hmm. Anxiety. No.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think the reason why is because we talk about what does that really look like when you conceptualize a project, whether it's starting a podcast, starting a small business, starting a degree plan, starting a relationship. It's a process,
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this has been an interesting process for us.
It has been. And I think that, we talk a lot about baby steps and things like that. And the stuff that we do, we always try to weigh how that impacts what we're doing in the moment. I think that we always try to see if we're in alignment with the goals that we are hoping to achieve.
Well, and I think you said something else too when we talk about that alignment. It's sometimes, you'll be there and you'll be thinking about something, and we do that often, and then it's like all of a sudden an article shows up or there's this serendipitous thing that happens.
Yeah. I think those are the signs, really, that show when you are in alignment with your goals. I think that a lot of times we've had to sit down and talk about prioritization and make sure that the next step that we're making is in alignment with that overall goal, because it's easy to get distracted by things. I mean, there's things that you want to do. We love to go to concerts. We love to do a lot of different things, but we have learned to prioritize some of the stuff that we do.
And I think that's really the big thing is I think that sometimes when you're starting a venture, it doesn't matter who it is, but I think when you start it, what happens is you start to think, I have to give up stuff. I think people go to that place. Well, yeah, I want this, but how do I have this and not get rid of this? And I think that's been a thing, but I think it becomes, I think in the conceptualization of that is oftentimes it's kind of like the person who goes to college. You were reading an article today on that young lady who her conceptualization, she knew what she wanted. Mm-hmm. And she's 20? I don't know how old she is now.
I can't remember exactly. She's like in her 20s or 30s or something like that. And she's set to retire pretty already. She's been working to be in alignment with that goal so that she could have an early retirement.
But she also realized that some of the stuff she was doing was already prepping her for this. Yeah. She traveled to around, I can't remember the country she was in.
Australia and some different places.
And got to go there, work there, did that. So she had life experience, but she was always putting aside.
And for her, the long-term goal was more important than even, like she talked about her living situation. She would choose to be in a home with roommates and that so that she could put aside savings in that. And that was her prioritization for that time so that she could get to where she needs to be.
And that's the thing. It's being able to know what those priorities are for everybody. And for everybody, it's different.
And being able to know what you can accept in that amount of time. Because we've talked about that as well. Some of our goals and things like that. There are some things in the moment right now that we really don't want to compromise on. We've read different articles about people living out of their vehicle to pay off student loans and things like that. And that's great if that works for them, especially if you're a single person. A lot of times that, I think is a choice that you can make. But if, you're starting out with a family and that kind of thing, living out of a van is probably not going to be,
I don't know. That might be quite the adventure for the kids.
oh, it could be, yes.
But could you imagine being with a family in that type of quarters? Whoa.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's why you park and you have all the great outdoors to let them out.
Go run and be free, kind of mentality. That's, I think, what it would be. But yeah, we talk about those things. We talk about what it is that we're willing to compromise on and what we're not willing to compromise on. And I think those are conversations that have to be had. If you're single, you just figure it out. When I work with people who are single and they're looking and how do we get from point A to point B, there's some very simple steps sometimes that they have to do, and baby steps even at that. It's when it starts getting closer to what they're wanting that the steps seem a little bit harder, or it's like people get more afraid.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When it's starting to be more real.
Well, and the decisions that you're making are impacting more people, because if you are single, it's one thing to a single person to be living off of ramen noodles, but when you have an entire family, you might have to look at Hamburger Helper.
Exactly.
Something like that. So, you have to weigh all those things.
And I think the thing is what feel like we do really well most of the time when you're listening.
I'm always listening. What do you mean?
It's just if she likes what I'm saying, no. But no, we really do well with talking to each other and sitting down and talking about what does that look like so that we're both picturing the same stuff. Because oftentimes, I'm telling you, when I'm working as a therapist, it freaks me out. And when I'm talking to couples and I'm in there thinking, I'm sorry, are you two on the same page here? Because none of what you're saying, your goals there's no matching up. They're like two opposites and I'm there like, I can see why we have a few problems here.
Exactly. And I feel like that you and I are fortunate in that we are on the same page a lot of the time, and we do like to bounce ideas off of one another. If you're a person going into this singly, it's your own venture, I understand. And I think that you do need to find those people that are your soundboard for you to help you make some of those crucial decisions when you're moving forward, and realizing those little steps, how valuable they are. We've been realizing that, I think, with the podcast, just the things that we've been doing that's forward motion that may just seem small, getting some of our sound equipment where it should be and all of that.
Well, and I think the other thing that's important is that when you get to that crossroad where maybe the things aren't matching up, you might not be as far apart as you think, but you won't know it until you have those conversations. And I think that's one of the things that we do, even because I'm going to tell y'all right now, earlier, we were doing some sound stuff, some soundboards in here, and we had a moment.
Mm-hmm. Not listening.
See, she admitted it, and y'all heard it.
Somebody wasn't listening.
Don't know who that was. But one of the things is then we had to pause and take a moment, because at the end of the day, we both realized that we want the same thing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you want the same thing, but maybe your paths look a little different. Mm-hmm. But it's how do you have those conversations where you can help the other person understand how you're seeing that path, then listening how they're seeing that path, and then how do you bring it together? Mm-hmm. Because I'm telling you right now, sometimes I think we've agreed never to put furniture together again, ever. Mm-hmm. We'll pay $900,000 for that crap. Yeah. Because it turns ugly with this. We have two very different ways. Mm-hmm. And then she's there like, you do know you're the one with dyslexia. Maybe you need to listen to me.
Because I'm the one looking at the directions.
I admit I don't look at directions because that just drives, I can't do it anyway. I do everything by feel and see. But see, yes. But see, the cool thing is that we've come to that realization that is one thing we're not going to compromise on, because it's not very pleasant.
Yeah, no, we'll hire a friend to put that furniture together.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Yes.
But those are the things that I'm talking about, because we have such different approaches to that. And then if you can't come to an agreement on it, that's going to be a really happy agreement for you, semi-happy, cordial, anything like that, look for something else. Mm-hmm. But that's all that process of trying to figure this out.
And also sometimes it's walking away from the moment that you're looking at something and it's causing you this trouble, just walk away from it for a little bit.
Absolutely. Because sometimes, often we will sit there and we will try using the same solution. Every time we try it, it's not working. But then we get all upset and we get all anxious. We get all of these things instead of, like you said, walk away, come back with a new perspective. And you can often, and then they're like, oh, well, why didn't I do that? Or sometimes you just talk it out. And I feel like that's something that is important. Bounce ideas off of people.
Yes.
I have the best job in the world, I think, because that's all I do all day. It's a matter of bouncing ideas off of this other person who's sitting across from me. Sometimes they'll listen. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes they feel like they should listen. Sometimes they feel like they don't have to. It doesn't matter. It's wherever they're at that moment and whatever resonates with them. And I think that's what it is when you're starting projects or you're doing stuff or you're having that anxiety or, you're feeling overwhelmed. Whatever it is, find that person you can bounce those ideas off of. Because I feel like sometimes they give you a different or a fresh look at it, a different perspective on it. And then you sit there and realize, yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah. And well, I think that it helps you to weigh the pros and cons about, maybe every step of the process, it's all important, but sometimes knowing the order of those things will help you out. It was like, when we started this venture, we knew that we needed sound equipment and things like that. So that had to be a priority. The way to make that happen and have that sound interface and all of that stuff that we had to get set up. But that was priority for this job, or, I call it a job, but.
But it also caused us anxiety because we didn't understand it. So what we did, what most people do, we procrastinated just a little bit because it was this thing of we felt it was bigger than it was. But then when we actually just sat down, worked together, YouTube is wonderful, Google, all those things. There's all these resources out there.
And there's also a lot of information out there. So, but when you start seeing the things that overlap, when we're researching and things like that, and we get an idea of what direction to take, and like you were saying about bouncing ideas off people, I think that when you talk to them and you're presenting that information, it helps you to make a better decision.
And how many out there, when you started a new venture, how good was it when those people that came and supported you? What a wonderful feeling, because then it made you kind of validated what you were doing. It meant something not only to you, but to other people. That's another thing. If you have people out there who are doing stuff, get out there, support them. Do what you can to lift them up. And also understand it's one of those things where, that person can also help you out.
Yeah, and a lot of times you have to realize your resources because you have friends that their professions have helped them to have experience in things that might be helpful to you.
Sometimes we have to make sure we don't let pride or ego get in our way. And oftentimes that's what it is. And I see it, as you do, particularly in business and stuff like that. And I tell people, if people don't have to reinvent the wheel, don't make them. If you can help them. And I really liked when Parissa said that. When we did the interview with Parissa, that was such an amazing thing when she said she wanted everybody to be successful too. It's not a secret. And I've always loved that in my profession because the team, I call it a team, but the women that I've worked with, we don't sit there and make somebody go do something, figure it out on their own. If we have the resources, we share those resources. And I think that is so important. Share, take time. That's that thing once again. But they don't know you have the resources or that unless there's communication that is happening. So it's really looking to those people who have sometimes more information than you do.
Yeah.
One other thing, we right off the bat, Christy tried editing for about half a second, and that was a big fat no.
That became a top priority too. We were like, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to need an editor.
And so in came Raymond.
Yeah.
And we are so grateful for Raymond because he has been with us from the beginning. So we're really grateful for that. He gets our stuff to us. He listens to it. I always wonder too, he listens to this stuff and I always think, wonder what he thinks about all this. If there's stuff he just sits there and shakes his head like, woo. ooh, that's out there. Or, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Because when you have that editor, they're listening to everything that you're saying.
Yeah.
And they listen to things that maybe get in there that hopefully he cuts out that doesn't make any sense or something. I don't know what an editor does. I just know it sounds good when we get it back.
Right.
So once again, understanding we weren't going to do this. That was outside of our expertise. And the other thing is sometimes you'll say, well, you know what, I'll gain that expertise. And I have people who do that. And they amaze me. I promise you, they amaze me. Oh, I'm going to learn this, and I'm going to learn this, and I'm going to learn this aspect of this. And I'm there like, wow, that's great. I know.
We use gratitude in all facets, I think. And I think that has been one of the things that even with this, we are always saying gratitude statements about our ability to learn new things and apply that knowledge in a way that's helpful to us.
The other thing is the gratitude for the people who come in our paths that really are helping with this and to support us, but also whether it's an interview or just those people who say, oh my God, I've heard your podcast. I really love your podcast, or I love this podcast, or whatever it is. There's just immense gratitude for that. And I think the thing is, though, is that realizing that anytime you're on a venture, when you're trying to do something else, it always involves other people.
Oh, yeah.
So because of that, that's why we're always promoting relationships on here. That connectivity that we have. Because, I mean, if we have one listener, we still connected.
Yeah.
But we still need that one listener. It doesn't matter. So that's the whole thing, is that it's still about relationship building. It's about those connections that we're making. And, we work on that. Sometimes, like I said, we sit down and we have anxiety. And as Jen Sincero says, if it scares the hell out of you, that's when you do it. I don't know if she knows what she's talking about. No.
Yeah.
She does. She's been very successful.
Very successful.
She's the author of You're a Badass series, and really great series. But that's what I mean. It's one of those things. We read her books.
Yeah. Which I feel like inspired us in a lot of ways.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that's one of the ways that I feel like that you kind of know you're in alignment, because it seems like these things line up for you when you are focused in on what it is that you're wanting to do. And it almost seems like happenstance sometimes, but it's these opportunities, you're able to see them, I think, because you have that clarity, because you're on this venture and you're looking for those little things that tell you that you're on the right track.
I really feel like there's so many people out there who keep doing the status quo, even though it does not, there's no happiness in it, or it's such a minimal amount of happiness. But then we get so used to that status quo, we get used to doing what's really comfortable for us. And that comfort really becomes this little prison that we put ourselves in, or this box.
The comfort zone is the place that dreams go to die. Yeah.
Ooh, listen to Christy, her little words of wisdom over here. Don't you love it? But it's true.
It is true.
It is absolutely true. And I understand it. Fear is, once again, this thing that we create in our head. When we talked about starting this, it was like, we're going to do it. And we're going to hope for the best. And we're going to get our little ducks in a row. And, as much as we can. And with what we've done, all those things, those step behind the scenes stuff to make it happen. But every once in a while, we'll come across something that's like, oh my goodness, I don't know how we do this, or
we get overwhelmed and then we tend to procrastinate on something. Yeah, we're definitely guilty of that. And I think that even though we've had forward motion even for a while with, we've had some great interviews. I appreciate all of the people that have been on. And I feel like that all of that, like I say, is in alignment. But I also feel like that we have procrastinated on a few things that we could probably be advanced from where we are even. But it's that comfort that you find, and people do it with their jobs all the time. I mean, it's what you're used to. They may have this idea over here on the side, but they're like, I don't know how to implement this or whatever. It's just those little things that you can start to implement that you actually start making it happen.
I'll even have that when somebody's offered a promotion and they're so afraid of the promotion. And I'll look at them and say, y'all know that you've already been doing that job this whole time, right? What? Well, everything you're telling me, you're doing this job. You're just not getting paid for it and you don't have the title for it.
Right.
But it's like that title scares them or whatever it is. And then it's like they stay, and it's like they will pass up on these opportunities because they don't realize I'm capable. Or why would they ask me? They're asking you because they see the potential in you. Because sometimes, once again, when somebody doesn't see the potential in themselves, it creates that problem. And like we talk about that comfort zone that is happening.
And I think that you can easily get into that rut and then you're just kind of stationary.
If you're in a place where you're happy, then you're happy.
Right.
But I think that even when we're happy, we're still striving for more. We still want to achieve something more. People have their little bucket list of things to do and all of that, which I think is great because I think that becomes, those are those little goals. We call it a bucket list, but they're really goals.
And realizing there is it's steps in but every step is part of the process. So you may not be where you want to be in this moment, but realizing that the decisions that you make it's pertinent to the future of what you want that to look like, and understanding that even like that girl that I was talking about earlier, how she made the decision to have the roommates and that, so it kept her cost of living down and that kind of thing. So like I said, that probably was not her goal to be, living with 4 or 5 other roommates, but it was part of the process.
I think the other thing that happens too is that people will be doing something and maybe something doesn't turn out the way they want. So then it's like they kind of give up. It's like, well, I did this and it didn't work. Well, the great thing is there are multiple ways to do something to make something work. But we get so caught up once again in that idea of what something's supposed to be that we don't step away. We don't have those conversations with others, or we go to that place where this is, once again, the word I don't like to use of they feel like they're a failure. And then they get stuck in that. Well, I failed. No, you're just continuing to practice.
You're continuing to learn. Those things are all part of a learning process. The first mics we bought were not the mics we're using now. We figured out from there that, okay, this isn't what we need. So, there are, just things that you try and do, and then sometimes they don't work out, but that's okay. You learned from that, and now you know what you need to do going forward.
I think the most important thing is when something doesn't work out the way we want it, whether it's relationships, business, I don't care what it is you have to look back on it and say, what am I grateful for having that experience or for having that person in my life? What am I grateful for? Because how am I a better person, or how am I better in business, or whatever that is? And I think if people would take more time to do that, they would understand that the value of everything that we do, there's a value in it. But we get to that place now where people just kind of, get to their comfort zone, I guess, as we call it. It's not that stuff's not happening in the comfort zone. It's just the same stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with that, once again. But, and we were talking about this earlier, part of our problem sometimes is we get too many ideas.
Yeah, that was another thing that I had thought about even with the Jen Sincero book, because she was talking about, once you get into that creative process, you're going to have 900 ideas that come to you, all these different ventures that, and some of them are, and realizing that it still may play out over time, but you have to be patient with yourself and really get focused about something. And then when you make that happen, it sometimes shows you the how of the next thing. That I feel like has kind of been the way it was even with you going into private practice. You went from being a military family life counselor, and that was great for us. We got to travel around in that and didn't have to actually rent a space. They were taking care of that part of it. So it gave us a little bit of freedom to know where we wanted to be, how things were going to look. And then once you got here to Springs through that job, you were doing contracting. So the contract work still gave you a little bit of freedom, but it showed you the structure of that business and how that worked, and everything helped you to progress into a private practice. So all of that was helpful.
And understanding that the goal was always private practice.
Yes.
But, fast forward, 11 years, no, 12, whatever. I can't, that's math. We don't do math as therapists. Fast forward, it happened.
Exactly. And it was an important part of the process because you think about when you were doing the contract work for that business, you were able to build and have that knowledge going forward into a private practice.
Well, I also had the flexibility because of the hours I could work and stuff like that. So I had the flexibility to start doing a little bit on the side and a little bit on the side. And it was one of those things where I had to be patient with it. And I've learned patience.
It was a stepping stone to where we needed to be for the private practice to come into fruition, because at first you were doing only, 2 days a week in an office as private practice, but you had the contract that was sustaining us. So that was helpful, and it had to happen that way in order to build. So sometimes the job that you don't want, you don't realize it's building, it's creating the next level for you. It's giving you that opportunity.
And sometimes it's not necessarily like the job that you don't want, but it's the jobs that you least expect sometimes that help you with the most movement. Do you know what I mean?
You never know the connections that you make there, all of those things that play into sometimes.
I keep saying I am so grateful because through the Military Family Life Counselor, I got to meet Kathy Weber and Sylvia Schreiber. I already knew Heather because I was her supervisor at a job before, and then she told me, hey, come be at an MFLAC. Once again, it's that communication. I told her, man, I'm looking for a job, and I just can't find crap right now. And she says, well, apply, and then I got it. And then, we went over. She went to this other company, and then Sylvia was there, and then I went there, and then I met Kathy Grunland, and we formed this amazing, then we all went out on our own individually, but we had a suite together, and that started a whole other process, so it's all of these things, but it's those connections that we started to make. And each connection provides something different. Not one connection does it all. That's why it's important to network. I'm working on that. No, but that's why it's important to do all of those things.
Yeah.
And through the podcast, I do much better at networking through the podcast. As a therapist, I don't network in the same way because people come to you.
Right. And it's a one-on-one engagement.
Yes. And so with the podcasting, it's been a different thing. And, we've got to meet some really amazing people through it. And I think that's one of the motivating factors. But one of the things we were talking about is all of those ideas. I mean, we are so into ideas and stuff that seriously, when we sit down to coffee in the morning, we have coffee every morning together. We're talking about ideas, and it's just firing ideas. When we're walking, all these ideas, and then sometimes it's like, oh my God, we got to rein this in, girl.
You have to realize that too, because sometimes it's not overwhelmed in a negative way. Sometimes it's the passion that is there, and it's spilling over, and you're talking to this other person, and they're like, whoa, wait, slow down. You got so many ideas. I don't know which way to go next.
And the other thing is having so many ideas also get in your way, because then you're so busy talking about the ideas, you're not doing the work.
That can happen too.
We've been there too.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing. It's all a learning process. And it's whatever that dream is for anybody. Understand that there's going to be little bumps in the road. There's going to be detours. And you don't realize sometimes that detour is exactly what you need. But sometimes we get caught up with the idea of, I'm on this path, and by golly, I'm going to stay on this path. And, you stay on the path and you stay on the path, but the path goes nowhere.
Yeah, and sometimes that's really something unexpected. I mean, even like we have talked about how COVID being very unexpected and how it impacted people and choices and things like that. And I think that out of COVID kind of was the whole idea even of starting the podcast, because we've wanted to reach out and give back in another way. And I mean, you were already doing therapy even all through that time, but that idea came to us, I feel like, in a time where that we weren't going out and socializing with people as much.
Well, and I think that's really, we talked about that because we talked about the increased anxiety we were seeing a lot of that through the COVID pandemic and stuff, and that sense of isolation.
Right.
And so our thing is let's talk to people about. So if you listen to our earlier episodes, we talk a lot about anxiety, depression, parenting, a lot of those things that you could tell were very much around that whole situation.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that I felt it was very relevant at that time,
Yeah.
because, and then we came out of COVID and people were there like, we want to do something. Cooped up is like, everybody want to go on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
So did we.
Right. So, I mean, even incorporating that into podcasting, we've talked a lot about travel and what that does for people. And I love that we've been able to continue on that path in pointing out all of those things that I feel like make us better versions of ourselves, being able to do that kind of thing or making those connections with other people, which I feel like we've been able to do. We've been, we've traveled and we've had so many interviews of people doing different things and following their passion.
And I think that's the other cool thing, and one of the things when we talked about this podcast was what was it going to represent? And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who the person is or what the journey is. It's the fact that they have a story that goes with that journey.
Right.
And because everybody has a story and sometimes we're not listening to them. I thought that too, when we did a couple of episodes with Bigfoot expedition people, and it was like, what is that going to be? I was amazed when people listened to it. Yeah. They loved the stories. They didn't realize it. They're like, oh, Bigfoot, that's kind of out there or whatever. That's why we're called Two Girls in a Pot and everything in between. Because there's a lot of stuff in between.
Exactly.
And I think that's the whole thing. When we're looking at that, it's that in-between stuff.
Yeah.
That sometimes is very relevant. And even as we've been doing this journey, and I think when people stop and think about it, really think about it, they're going to sit there and say, oh my gosh, there is a lot of that in-between stuff that really is relevant.
Mm-hmm.
It's what helped me to take some steps that I didn't even realize. And it's in sometimes hearing somebody's story that you meet, that you're amazed by or moved by or...
Yeah, because even those stories that people tell it's inspiring. So, you listen to those stories and even though they, revolve around maybe Bigfoot or UFOs or things like that, there is that backstory to it that you can see.
It's an experience that changed somebody's life.
Right. You can see the impact.
And because of that, that's that detour that we have in life. And we have multiple detours.
Yeah.
People are always telling me, well, about life. Yeah, life comes up and slaps you in the face every once in a while with stuff you don't expect.
Yeah.
But the thing is that even if it does, do you stay down or do you get back up?
Mm-hmm.
We've all had that. But I will often hear that, well, am I doing stuff and, I'm trying to save money or I'm trying to do this and then this happens and this happens. And they're like, what does that have to do with your path?
Mm-hmm.
All it means is take a detour where this is the detour and you do something else. But we can't talk with my clients often about complacency. My clients have amazing lives. I am always amazed with my clients, I'm telling you right now. The lives they live through some of the adversity that they've had, how many of them still give back. They're doing things, they're making things happen, regardless of that past, whatever's happening even in this current moments. So it's that journey. It's that whole process, They just come in because they want to keep doing it and be more effective with it or whatever. And you don't need a therapist for that, but you do need some really good friends, some sounding boards and
right.
Those new relationships, going to those people who are experts in areas that you are not.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do all of those different kind of things. And I know that for us, sometimes it's been that thing of, oh crap, where do we find this? How do we do this? And then if we muddle around it enough and can't figure it out, then we're calling in a lifeline. We're calling a friend, man.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. Call a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Ask somebody.
Yeah, sometimes you have to do that.
And I think that when you do that, that shows you that you understand, even though it's your project, any project we do, unless it's something very individual to us, which may bring you joy, but I mean, most things in life that we do is going to impact at least one or more people.
You want to, yeah, it's usually something that is going to have an effect outside of you. Creating this for a reason. It's sort of like, just recording. You know that other people are going to be listening and that. So, I mean, it's always not just about you.
No, and I think that was one of the things, because you and I were talking about that today. And I was telling you, girl, we got too many ideas. We got to rein it in. And we got to, what are some of the things we've been doing? What are some of the things we have to do?
What are some of the things we've put off?
Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah.
I'm not too proud to admit it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I tell people we're all the same in some ways.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes it just seems too daunting, too overwhelming of a task. And it's just simply because we don't know it,
Yeah. But I always tell people, people will tell me that, and especially when I used to work with kids, oh, Miss Sharon, I just can't do that. I don't know how. And I said, honey, you didn't know how to tie your shoes when you first started. You didn't know any of this stuff. I said, or when they stress going into middle school or high school. They're like, y'all didn't know anything when you went into kindergarten and first grade either, but guess what? You managed it. We forget those things. We forget our successes already.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. Look back on the things you've been successful at already.
Yeah. You have to give yourself some credit. And like you mentioned earlier, even the things that didn't work out, what did you learn from it and bring with you now that you can apply that knowledge?
And sometimes, it's like something that sounds really, really, really good in your head. Mm-hmm. And then you go to play it out, not so good. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why that is. It's kind of freaky, I think, sometimes because you really can visualize it. But then there's variables maybe we don't realize are impacting the outcome. I'm not sure what that is. But by the same token, I think that the most important thing is that having those ideas, realizing that we're all similar in some ways, and that when we're doing new things, we're going to have that anxiety. Mm-hmm. And that's when we really have to sit there and say, this scares the hell out of me, so this is when I'm going to do it. Yeah. And realize, have that safety net of your friends, family, coworker, whoever that safety net is, to have those people, and encourage those people to support you. Mm-hmm. And we hope that they support you. You know what I mean? Because that support's important for people. There's a lot of people out there really trying or doing their best to, whether it's Etsy or, there's so many things now, whether it's somebody who's vlogging or TikToking or podcasting, writing. It doesn't matter. Artist, music. They're out there, they're busting their butt, and all they want is some recognition that people are saying, yes, what you've done is valuable to me. Or I see the value in it. That's what I really love about Brandon Bimoza. He keeps working at that music, and he is so talented. Yeah. He really, really is. And get on YouTube. Listen to some of his stuff. Bimoza, he's talented. Mm-hmm. But work. But if nobody's hearing and nobody's listening, especially if you're doing music and things like that, if that's your whole thing, it's kind of like podcasters. Podcasters, it's kind of nice when you have listeners. Mm-hmm. Listeners, followers, subscribers, whatever they call it. There's a whole bunch of names for that stuff. They're like, what do we have over here? But those are the things. Be supportive where you can. Think about your friends or family who are doing something in a new venture. Support them. If you're starting a new venture, ask for that support too. Yeah. All of those things are important. Remember, this is about connections, relationships, and that's why we love what we do with this podcast. But it's one of those things that we also have to realize, and that's the whole thing, understanding it's baby steps. And like we're learning as we go.
You have to have patience with yourself. Give yourself some grace. And realize it's going to take some time to maybe learn whatever it is that you need to make happen. But, it does help having those support systems and that. And we talked a lot about that in our last podcast, inspiring others and just being, that support to them. I think that is really important. But just also checking yourself and making sure that you're still in alignment with the decisions that you're making right now, that it is in alignment with where you're going and what you want to make happen.
And understand too, if you start a project and it's not for you, be okay with stopping it.
Yeah.
Just because you start something and you think it's going to do something for you and it falls flat on its face, don't keep doing it because you started, oh, I've got to follow through with this. You're wasting time. If it truly is not resonating with you, if it is not moving you, resonating, inspiring you, sparking that light for you, it's okay.
Yeah, and realizing it's probably not going to do that for somebody else either because you're not feeling it like that, you know?
I always love that. If somebody says, I'm this, and then they're like, oh, well, maybe I'm not. Well, then who cares? It doesn't matter. Learn from whatever that was. Go to the next thing. Figure out what it is you want to do. Be inspired. Inspire others. But don't do something that is flat and you have no investment in or you don't feel it.
Yeah.
That to me is...
Because if you lack the passion for it, it's really not worth your time and energy.
I have been so fortunate because a majority of the jobs I've had in my life, I've really loved them. I really have. I've loved being a therapist. I love what I do. So I don't feel like it's work.
What about the logging job?
Ay, Dios mío. That about killed me. Okay, I peeled logs. You know, the old-fashioned way you use this thing and you just peel off because, you know, I guess rich people want it to look authentic. I don't know. That's what they all said to me. I did that. And the first day after that, I want y'all to know, I felt like I was a question mark. My body was, and I couldn't move. And so I went, took a bath, and I swear it was so bad. But guess what? I said, by golly, I'm going to conquer this because there was part of it that became a challenge because women didn't do this. Okay. But I was out there and I did it as, you know, I did it for a while, then ended up moving it or something else happened. So he had to leave the job. It wasn't too bad. The people there were cool.
Well, you probably got the workout in.
Oh my
too.
God. You don't realize how long 30 foot is until you're peeling a log. That was like, oh God.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, mate, that was a little rough, but you know, I still appreciate it because it taught me something too. It taught me that I could do it. If I set my mind to it, I could do it. Now, is that something I wanted to do for a lifetime? Hell no. But I'm grateful for it for when it happened because it was a good time to make some money and stuff. And that these men said, okay, yeah, we never had a girl apply before. Really? Well, I need a job. They said yes. So for that, I'm grateful. So, you know, once again, it's all these things, that was a detour.
Definitely sounds like a detour.
Understand, when you start these ventures, there's going to be a lot of things. Reining oneself in, have all those ideas because that's great. Write them all down.
Mm-hmm.
You
Writing
know,
things down, that's really, really important.
have passion about it. Talk to others. Get those people to support you as best you can. Support others. Learn that this is a working relationship. Once again, we cannot have a podcast if we do not have at least one listener.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So long as we have one listener, we get to be a podcast.
Yeah.
We get this podcast and we so love it. We're grateful for it. But remember, it's all a process.
Mm-hmm.
You can choose to stay in that comfort zone if you want.
Yeah. But
Or
getting focused and keeping in mind that there'll be things that will come up, but you just keep moving forward, even if it's small steps.
exactly. So we hope this gave you some ideas and gave you a little more insight into even what little struggles we have, even in these ventures that we take, and understanding that just like everybody else, it's not all smooth sailing. It's a work in progress. And we appreciate the fact for our listeners that you are on this journey with this work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
So we thank you so much for that. And we hope that you guys have an amazing week. And we will be back next week. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.